You who have made it this far might not even be able to explain why, but you feel a silent restlessness within you, as if something were changing without warning. It's not fatigue, confusion, or illness. It's an inner, profound movement that begins to awaken when the soul is ready for a new phase. This video is for those who are experiencing that right now. In recent days, many chosen ones have reported a strange feeling, as though the world remains the same, but they are no longer who they were. Small things have started to bother them. Old patterns have lost meaning, and an invisible force seems to be pulling them inward. This is not imbalance, it's preparation. It's the approach of the second spiritual awakening, the phase where nothing remains superficial. What once was only intuition now becomes certainty. What once was doubt now presents itself as inner truth. The chosen begins to see beyond the eyes, hear beyond the ears, and feel beyond the body. And even if no one around understands, you can feel that something greater is happening. That's exactly what we're going to talk about in this video. About that which only those who are awakening can recognize. Here, we'll walk together through the signs, sensations, and invisible movements that announce this new expansion of consciousness. Not with complicated terms or abstract explanations, but with the simple truth that only the spirit understands. If your heart started beating faster, if you felt this message resonate, it's because it is meant for you. Nothing you're experiencing is accidental. It's all part of the process. My name is George, and I'm here to accompany the chosen ones through this profound transition. If this content touches you, follow the channel, turn on notifications, and stay close. Your spiritual journey is only beginning, and you don't have to go through it alone. Today, your awakening enters a new stage. Let's keep walking together. When we talk about the second awakening, we are referring to a spiritual phase that happens only with souls that have already gone through the first rupture of consciousness. In the first awakening, the chosen one realizes that life is broader than what the physical senses can perceive. They awaken to the fact that there is a spiritual reality operating behind everything. But that is only the doorway. The second awakening not only shows you this reality, it places you inside it. In the second awakening, the chosen one is no longer just observing the world with new eyes. They now feel this new reality pulsing within them. It's like stepping out of a dark room and into a bright space where every detail becomes clear. What once seemed like coincidence is now perceived as a sign. What once was intuition now becomes guidance, and what once quietly bothered you now becomes clearly identified as misalignment. The second awakening is a process of emotional, mental, and energetic depth. It arrives when the soul is mature enough to cross through internal layers that, until then, were guarded or dormant. That's why so many people mistake this moment for emotional crisis, exhaustion, anxiety, or even illness. But in truth, this initial discomfort is the reflection of consciousness expanding, pushing old structures outward. What once sustained your life no longer has room to remain. The change doesn't happen because you decide. It happens because your soul is ready. That's what differentiates the chosen ones. They don't cause the awakening. They respond to the calling. The universe senses when the frequency is aligned and begins the process of inner transformation. You start to notice that old thoughts lose meaning, desires change direction, relationships become more transparent, and deep emotions surface out of nowhere. In the second awakening, your perception of reality widens. You begin to see that everything in the universe is energy, motion, and vibration. You can feel clearly that there is a higher intelligence guiding all events. At the same time, it becomes impossible to live on autopilot. Every choice, even small ones, carries energetic weight. Life stops being something that happens to you and becomes something that responds to you. This awakening also heightens your sensitivity, not the kind mistaken for weakness, but a refined perception that allows you to feel what lies behind words, actions, and intentions. You begin to notice when something isn't true, when someone isn't aligned, when an environment doesn't belong to you. This sensitivity is a result of spiritual expansion, not emotional fragility. It protects you, guides you, and leads you along the paths your soul needs to travel. Another striking aspect is that the second awakening reveals parts of yourself that were hidden. Dormant gifts begin to emerge, intuitive abilities intensify, insights appear spontaneously, and a new clarity takes over your mind. You begin to question not only the external world, but also your inner layers. The search stops being about external answers and becomes a journey inward. This process is neither quick nor linear. There are days when everything seems to make sense, and others when the weight of awakening feels greater than you can bear. But it's precisely in these highs and lows that your soul grows. The second awakening is above all a reconstruction. And that reconstruction opens the way for something greater. The revelation of your essence, your mission, and your purpose as a chosen one. The second awakening brings with it one of the most intense and challenging stages for any chosen one: the dissolution of the ego. This process doesn't happen to destroy you, but to reveal who you truly are. Throughout life, the ego built layers made of fears, expectations, obligations, imposed beliefs, and identities you thought you needed to adopt to survive. In the second awakening, all of that begins to fall away. The dissolution of the ego is not a conscious act. It is a natural movement of the soul. When consciousness expands, what does not belong to your essence loses power. That's why many people during this time feel as though they are losing control. But it's not your true self losing control. It's just the character you've learned to play over the years. That character was useful once, but now it blocks your evolution. It's common in this phase to encounter deep questions. Who am I really? What do I want? Why does this no longer make sense? Why can't I be who I was before? These questions aren't signs of confusion. They're signs of liberation. It's your true identity emerging. When the ego weakens, the soul begins to speak louder. The dissolution of the ego also involves detachment from labels, social roles, family titles, appearances, external validation. All of that loses importance. Not because you stop loving or caring, but because you realize your identity cannot be defined by what you do or by what others expect you to be. You begin to connect with a much deeper version of yourself. And as that happens, old behaviors stop making sense. You distance yourself from empty conversations, environments that drain your energy, and people who live superficially. You seek silence, connection, truth. There is a genuine need to feel whole again, no longer divided between what you feel and what you show. This dissolution also touches old emotions, suppressed anger, ignored sadness, forgotten traumas. All of it returns to be seen, acknowledged, and released. Not to hurt you, but to cleanse what blocks your expansion. You are not regressing, you are healing. Every emotion that rises is part of the inner reconstruction. When the ego gives way, something extraordinary arises. Awareness of your essence. It's a reunion with your original nature, that pure, intuitive, sensitive, and wise version of you that has always existed within, but was buried under the weight of experience. This discovery isn't violent. It's quiet and liberating. It's like coming home after a long time. At that moment, the chosen one understands that true strength lies not in control, but in trust. Not in being admired, but in being authentic. Not in having answers, but in embodying truth. The dissolution of the ego allows you to live from the soul, no longer from defense. It is the stage that marks spiritual rebirth. When the second awakening begins to take root, something very profound happens within the chosen ones. Sensitivity expands. But unlike what many believe, this sensitivity is not fragility. It is clarity, perception, the ability to see beyond the surface. It's a kind of vision that doesn't depend on the eyes, but on the spirit. You begin to notice subtleties you once ignored. People, environments, conversations, and even thoughts start to carry meanings you couldn't grasp before. The spiritual senses open as if they had been dormant for years. You begin to feel when someone is not being sincere, even if that person smiles. You sense when an environment welcomes or drains you. You understand, without anyone having to explain, that certain cycles have ended and that other doors are ready to open. None of this is imagination. It's the result of your frequency rising and your consciousness becoming more refined. This new sensitivity may feel strange at first. You might feel emotionally exposed, more affected by noises, arguments, violence, negative news, or rude behavior. But this happens because your energetic field is being purified. Everything you once tolerated out of habit now becomes unbearable. Not because you've become weaker, but because you finally aligned with your truth. The chosen ones naturally begin to distance themselves from people who live in chaos, who feed on conflict, or vibrate in superficiality. Not out of judgment, but out of energetic incompatibility. Your soul knows it cannot stay where there is no reciprocity, presence, or honesty. Your sensitivity is a protection mechanism. It clearly shows you where you belong and where you no longer do. This phase also awakens deep empathy. You begin to feel the pain of others as if it were your own, but in a different way. Not to suffer, but to understand. The suffering of others touches you because you recognize that all are part of the same consciousness. This opens within you a sincere desire to help, support, guide, and comfort. This heightened empathy is one of the gifts of the second awakening because it prepares you to understand your spiritual mission. In addition, your perception of beauty also transforms. Small details that used to go unnoticed, the movement of the wind, the light of dawn, the silence of the night, the expressions on people's faces, begin to move you deeply. Not because of aesthetics, but because of vibration. You begin to see the sacred in everything, because now your soul recognizes the presence of the divine in every detail. This refined sensitivity is not just a sign, it's a tool for your journey. The second awakening also changes your relationship with your body. You begin to notice intense sensations, tingling, warmth, pressure in the head, shivers, changes in sleep patterns, and even moments of forgetfulness. These manifestations are not illness. They are signs of energetic expansion taking place. Your body is learning to sustain a higher vibration, and because of that, it reacts in unusual ways. It's important to welcome this process without fear. With this new sensitivity, you stop living automatically. Every gesture, every word, every intention begins to be experienced with greater responsibility. Life stops being merely functional and becomes meaningful. This expanded sensitivity is one of the greatest gifts of the second awakening, because it transforms you into someone more aware, more attentive, and more authentic. It prepares you to recognize your mission and walk with purpose. The second awakening brings to the surface the deepest fears, not to punish you, but to free you. When consciousness expands, what was hidden in the shadows starts to appear. Fear is one of those shadows. It manifests in many ways. Insecurity, anxiety, doubts, the feeling of losing control. But contrary to what it seems, This is a sign that your soul is cleansing old residues that were blocking your growth. The fears that arise during this period are not new. They've always existed within you, muted by distractions, obligations, and emotional survival. Now, with a clearer mind and an awakened spirit, they emerge for recognition. At this point, many chosen ones wonder if they are regressing. But what's really happening is the exact opposite. You're finally ready to face what you've avoided for years. During the second awakening, you understand that fear is not truth. It's an emotional memory. Gradually, you see that it has no real substance. It dissolves when you face it consciously. Every time you confront a fear, a part of your ego loses strength, and a part of your soul shines brighter. This doesn't mean you stop feeling fear. It means it no longer dictates your decisions. This process opens the way for something greater: purpose. When fear loses space, truth begins to emerge. Purpose never reveals itself, while the mind is dominated by insecurity. But as you purify yourself internally, the vision of what you came here to do begins to surface, not as a ready-made answer, but as a deep inner sense of direction. Many people believe that purpose is a profession, a talent, or a specific destiny. But in truth, purpose is vibration. It is what you transmit, what you awaken in others, what your soul naturally expresses when you're aligned with your essence. Purpose reveals itself when you live in coherence with who you truly are. During the second awakening, you feel a shift in how you handle your responsibilities. Things that once motivated you lose their power, and what truly holds meaning begins to draw your attention. You feel attracted to paths that elevate your energy, to deeper conversations, to more authentic relationships, to activities that resonate with your soul. This is not a phase, it's alignment. Purpose reveals itself little by little. It shows up when your soul finds space to speak. It manifests when you free yourself from expectations and start listening to your own intuition. It becomes stronger when you realize you were born for something greater than mere survival. The chosen one is not called for an ordinary life. They are prepared for a mission that involves healing, awareness, light, and positive influence. When you accept that fear is simply an invitation to grow, and that purpose is born from the courage to be who you truly are, something inside you opens. It's as if a piece of the puzzle finally fits. Life gains meaning. Your struggles gain purpose. Your journey ceases to be about pain and becomes about evolution. The second awakening transforms fear into courage and courage into mission. And that's how the chosen one begins to walk. Not as someone lost, but as someone guided. With clarity, with strength, and with purpose. The second awakening becomes evident when certain signs begin to manifest clearly and continuously in the lives of the chosen ones. These signs do not appear as extraordinary phenomena, but as deep internal changes that gradually reflect in the way you think, feel, and act. It's as if your soul, once suppressed, now has space to breathe and express itself with renewed strength. These signs are proof that the new consciousness is settling in, and that your old identity no longer holds power over you. One of the first signs is the clarity of intuition. What once appeared as a weak hunch now presents itself as a silent, yet steady, certainty. It's an inner guidance that doesn't shout, but gently leads. You start realizing that your decisions no longer come solely from your mind. They begin to be directly influenced by your inner knowing. This intuition becomes your most reliable guide because it arises from your spiritual alignment. Over time, it stops feeling like a vague sensation and becomes a clear compass. Another striking sign is the increase in synchronicities. Repeating numbers, unlikely coincidences, messages that seem to arrive at the exact moment, unexpected encounters that change your direction, lucid dreams that bring answers. All these phenomena become more frequent. These synchronicities are the universe's way of confirming that you are walking in harmony with the flow of life. It's as if an invisible dialogue were being established between you and the spiritual plane, validating each step your soul takes in this new phase. It is also common during the second awakening for relationships to change drastically. Some bonds naturally strengthen, while others dissolve effortlessly. This happens because your vibrations start to reorganize. Everything that is not in harmony with your new frequency drifts away or loses relevance. What remains is what sustains your growth. The chosen ones begin to crave more genuine bonds, deeper conversations, and connections that are not superficial. Nothing less than that feels sufficient anymore. In addition, old emotions begin to surface for release. No matter how long you've carried these memories, during the second awakening they rise to be healed. You may cry for no apparent reason, feel nostalgic, sad, or suddenly lighthearted. This doesn't mean regression, it's cleansing. The soul uses this period of expansion to expel emotional patterns that have been stored for years. Emotional release is part of the internal restructuring that accompanies awakening. Changes in the body are also frequent. You might experience variations in sleep, warmth in the chest, tingling, pressure sensations in the head, intense fatigue, or even moments of heightened energy. These signs are not symptoms of illness, but natural responses to your rising vibration. Your body is learning to sustain higher frequencies, and that requires adaptation. When you understand that these sensations are part of the process, anxiety diminishes and surrender deepens. Another essential sign is the shift in how you view life. Small events begin to carry great meaning. Ordinary situations start to teach profound lessons. Routine stops being automatic and becomes a space for awareness. You notice yourself being more present, more conscious, more connected to what you experience. Life gains new depth, not because it has changed on the outside, but because you have changed on the inside. The second awakening also brings a strong sense of purpose, even if you can't yet put it into words. There's an internal calling growing stronger, as if something within you whispers, "I was born for something greater." This feeling isn't arrogance, it's recognition. You realize that all your experiences, pains, and lessons have been preparing you for a path that is now revealing itself. Purpose doesn't appear as an immediate answer, but as an inner movement that steers you toward the life you were destined to live. You are not sick. Understand this once and for all. Many chosen ones reach the second awakening believing they are sick, unbalanced, or experiencing some kind of internal collapse. This happens because the symptoms of this phase do not resemble anything the ordinary mind can recognize. The body changes, emotions fluctuate, sensitivity heightens, sleep transforms, and the world feels strange. But this is not illness, it's expansion. It's your consciousness surpassing old limits to reach a new level of perception. The confusion arises because we live in a world that does not recognize the movement of the soul. Any deep change is immediately labeled as imbalance. But the second awakening does not follow conventional parameters. It stirs the body, the mind, the energy, perceptions, and even the way you interpret life. This is not a sign of fragility. It is a sign of transformation. The emotional discomfort you feel is your soul cleansing what no longer belongs to your path. The exhaustion is the consequence of years carrying burdens that are now being released. The extreme sensitivity is your consciousness opening to higher levels of reality. The feeling of not fitting in is the result of leaving behind your old frequency. You are not sick. You are awakening, and all of this is part of the process. If you've made it this far, it's because some part of these words has found an echo within you. The second awakening is not simple, not comfortable, and not always understood by those around you. But it marks the most important moment in the spiritual journey of the chosen ones, the moment when your soul decides to take command of your own life. It's a turning point. After it, nothing goes back to the way it was before. And that is not something to fear, but something to celebrate. This phase brings questions, internal changes, strange sensations, and moments of deep reflection. But it also opens doors to clarity, to stronger intuition, to true discernment, to a deep sense of purpose, and to a more intense connection with the divine. What appears as chaos at first later reveals itself as order. What seems like confusion transforms into direction. What feels like loss becomes liberation. The most important thing to remember is that you are not alone. Every symptom, every emotion, every change is part of a path that thousands of other chosen ones are also walking. The feeling of not belonging is precisely the sign that you no longer belong to what has been left behind. And the feeling of changing is proof that your consciousness is evolving toward who you truly are. Now I want to hear from you. Comment below. Have you experienced any of these signs? Have you felt these physical, emotional, or spiritual changes? Your experience can help many others who are going through the same phase and have not yet understood what is happening within them. Your voice matters, your experience matters, and your evolution has already begun.